You can have the best implementation partner in the world, but you've got to have somebody in your firm that's able to get the employees excited, that's able to get the staff excited and on board, and to see how it benefits them and how it's going to make their lives easier.
Welcome to Salesforce Radio, your destination for insights, news, and community connections within the dynamic Salesforce ecosystem. Jason Adams, welcome to Salesforce Radio. Very excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks, man. I'm happy to be here.
Jason is the Director of Operations at Hoglund Mrozik Law Firm. Really excited to speak with you. You're a little bit different than any of the guests I've had on so far. And I'll tell you why, because you and I have been speaking now for about a year and a few months, beginning of 2023. You showed up and said, hey, looking for a new solution for document generation in Salesforce. And that's where our relationship started. So, we've been able to kind of get through a project together already, maybe a project or two at this point. So it's a little different. I haven't had someone really who have had a relationship with through actually, working with Titan and working with the system. And that's not really what we're going to focus on today, but it's kind of a great place to start. So, what I want to hear today maybe is a little bit about your journey into Salesforce and what you do at the law firm. I know that, every time we've spoken, one time you're at Dreamforce, one time, you were getting ready for a certification. So I know there's a good backstory here and excited to hear it. So thanks for joining.
Awesome. So I came to Hoglund Law about 8 years ago. When I came, just like most law firms, Hoglund Law was very behind technologically, not in the sense of law firms, but in sense of just, offices and technology in general. They were still, leads from an email queue that they were pulling and calling on a manual phone and trying to keep track of it in a server-based CRM. So we started, a long way off. We implemented a call center solution and a lead queue. We implemented a bunch of different things using typical, legal software, things like Clio and Prevail. And we're really, fighting that battle for about 3 years when I finally, convinced everybody to let's take a look at Salesforce. So we did, and we ended up getting set up with Salesforce. One thing I figured out very early on is if you don't have somebody in the business that's one, really championing and advocating for the product, and two, taking the time to learn how to implement, to learn how to make the new things happen that you need, you end up spending a lot of money with implementation partners down the road. I mean, nobody wants to use an implementation partner forever. So I've, hit the trailheads. I'm a 2-star ranger now. I've studied with a lot of focus on Force. I've got 2 consulting certifications, plus my admin certification, working on Platform App Builder right now, but really just dug in to learn everything I needed to make it successful for my organization.
So when you joined the firm, Salesforce wasn't on your radar?
No. I came from a call center background, so even replacing the CRM wasn't really in my wheelhouse. I started with the phone system and using Five9 and lead queue and list dialing, and we really made a difference in the call center. And from there, I started moving up. I actually advocated to move to Salesforce about a year after being here. I had used it in previous call center places. Of course, that was Salesforce Classic and much different from what we're using today. But no, it was about a year and a half in and dealing with Clio, dealing with Prevail and all these other legal specific solutions that just didn't fit the buck, especially when it came to analytics and reporting as well as automation.
Interesting. So basically you had been in those other positions before you got to Hoglund, you were using Salesforce as like an end user, as someone in the call center, or you were working on the operations side?
No, I owned my own call center for 6 years. I ran 3 call centers before that, and so more on the operations side, but I was not the administrator. I was just, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is what we need. We're going to click here, click there. I had no idea how it worked on the back end.
And had you been in the position to make the decision about Salesforce in the past? Like, had you been the one who came and said, no, it was...
No. I was mostly running the sales team side of it, and we were using the client system. It wasn't much that I had any control over at that point.
Mm-hmm. So in those situations, Salesforce is implemented internally by a partner. You're using a managed package. What was that like?
Previously, I was running a team of end users on a system that wasn't mine. So they were doing all of that on the back end. And again, it was back in Salesforce Classic. It was enough for me to remember that, hey, this was a pretty good system. And what we're using right now isn't very good. So it pointed me in the right direction to Salesforce. I knew very little about Salesforce when I went looking.
It's so interesting. So then you come into this current position. Your title is what exactly?
Well, now it is Director of Operations. At the time I came in 8 years ago, it was Call Center Manager.
Call Center Manager. And you're the call center manager. You're saying, hey, this system, these different systems we're using, they're not exactly optimal to be nice.
Right.
What happens next?
Well, and so it kind of started with building, in the call center, I would build intakes, new client forms with Cognito forms using Zapier to push things into Clio. And so we did a lot of that stuff in the call center with automation, including hooking Pipedrive onto the front of Clio, things like that. We built out solutions in Infusionsoft and Keep Infusionsoft or Clio for other law firms. But again, you find out as you go down that road, it works, but not as well as you'd like it to, and everything's still not cohesive. We made a lot of progress, going through that whole process. We learned a lot. But when we jumped into Salesforce, the amount of automation and organizational structure that comes along with that and good programming instead of just making it happen, it was a huge change for us, and we haven't looked back since.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about, I guess, that initial implementation. You had mentioned earlier, hey, it's not good to ever be stuck with a partner forever. And it's funny because on this podcast, I've also spoken with some partners and said to them, I said, hey, when I came into this ecosystem in this world, I was kind of surprised because I would think that the model is for the partners to want to be stuck with you forever. But from what I see, mostly partners actually don't really want to be stuck with a customer forever. They actually want to come in and do a project. They want to finish it. They want to move on. Maybe, you're going to come back for a new project, but they don't want to be there for, never ending maintenance. That's not the idea of the partner ecosystem in Salesforce in general. So it sounds like maybe you learned the hard way of that, but tell me a little bit about that, I guess, initial implementation of Salesforce and what you learned during that process.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When you're working with the good partners, anyways, enablement is key, and it's not that we don't want your work as managed services and to continue helping you, but we want to use your money, your budget for that efficiently and get you the most results for your buck. And if you can handle the day-to-day stuff and the little things, we can take that budget that you do have for managed services, things like that, and make real improvements to your system that are really going to make a forward momentum. So when we started out, again, I knew very little about Salesforce. I was learning. I knew I was going to be the guy in-house that was going to be dealing with it long-term. And I knew the partners, the owners here weren't going to pay, a managed partner for years and years to come. That's just not the model they like to use. So I had my work cut out for me. I will say, wasn't a huge fan of the implementation partner as a general that I used, but there was one consultant who did a very, very good job enabling me and teaching me about flows and teaching me about, object relationships and the way that the system goes together. And it really started me off on a trailhead journey. And, I got to the point, so they implemented our Social Security department, I would say for the most part, and a portion of our bankruptcy. From there, we added another 6.5 law types over the next 2 years that I implemented myself from what I learned in that initial process. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of partners out there that specialize in law firms that have done a lot of law firms. And, when you come to that table as a law firm, you don't know anything about Salesforce. So there's a lot of things I think that got built that we thought we needed, that they thought we needed, that weren't necessary. But some of that communication can be really hard in the beginning when it's someone who hasn't worked within your industry. That's something we're kind of hoping to do a little bit better, having been a law firm that's been through this, having not only implemented solutions for ourselves, but other law firms that we've worked with. We'd like to bring some of that expertise to the implementation partner space.
That's really cool. Yeah, I definitely want to hear about that a lot more at some point during this discussion, because you also, last time we spoke, kind of alluded to, hey, we want to now that we have this. How many years has it been? How many years did you say it's been since you started with Salesforce?
Gosh, it's got to be 5 now. I think we're going on year 5. Yep.
So basically 5 years in, at this point, you are basically the CRM owner, right, in the organization. Is
Correct.
that
absolutely?
Okay. So you're director of operations, CRM owner. Who else is on your team at this point? What's your team made up of? Who's it made up of?
Yeah. So I have an account manager. Her name is Venetia. I've had her with me since the beginning here at Hoglund. She is great at working with clients. We have an answering service where she's, done a lot of that project management, project planning, communication. I do a lot of the technical stuff. I also have a junior administrator that works underneath me here for Hoglund. And then we've got a couple of, partners, depending on the amount of work that comes in, that we can work with for extra hours as needed and to get, bigger projects done a bit quicker, but with guidance of that, legal expertise.
So you mentioned before that when you first rolled out Salesforce, it was for Social Security, basically one part of the business, part of the law firm. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So tell me about those first couple use cases. What was going on there? What were you guys doing? Obviously, without giving away too much of, the secrets over there in the law firm.
No, that's no problem. So some of the biggest advantages I would say that Salesforce brought in immediately. First, our sales process, from the marketing intake where we just, ask all the questions to see if they're eligible for Social Security to what we call our sales department, which would be following up on that retainer, getting them signed up, getting them on board, maybe getting any initial payment. Automating that with sales engagement and cadences, omni-channel as well has been really powerful for us. Analytics has been huge. I mean, some of these tools that most law firms are still using, especially, that mid-sized law firm, consumer, personal injury, mass tort, things like that are using, they don't have real reporting systems. What they have is you can export a spreadsheet of data. And if you're really good at pivot tables and VLOOKUPs, you can maybe make something of it slowly. And so we were paying people to do that and spend hours and hours putting together, reports where they were making a spreadsheet and inputting numbers in. So the accuracy in our data, as well as the speed of access and everybody being able to get to the data when they need it and act on it and know it's right. One thing I've found that's really hard, I think, for a lot of law firm partners to get their, to wrap their head around is, the good lawyers typically make and try to make data-driven decisions. And they, base that on having a good reporting system. Where I found a lot of them struggle is focusing on how that data is procured and their process of getting that data that they're relying on. How is that data being entered? What validation is there to make, validation rules to make sure that somebody enters this field every time? Because if that data is not there, your reports are wrong. And that seems to be a hard hump for a lot of law firms to kind of put that side one and side two together to really get a full view of how their business is doing. And Salesforce did that for us.
Interesting. So when you started out, how many users did you guys have in Salesforce?
I think we're pretty close to where we are now user-wise. We started at 90. I think we're around 115 right now.
Mm-hmm.
So gone up just a little bit, but there was a huge labor reduction based on things that we did in Salesforce as well. Obviously cutting out those spreadsheets, even things that you wouldn't think would be a big deal like list views, going from trying to work off a task list and move it and being, many people, we still have some people that work on a task list depending on their position, but using list views to automate a lot of that follow-up, a lot of that I need to do this now because this happened in the case was huge, and speeding people up and making them more efficient so that we needed less labor in the same positions and could do more for our employees that were excelling in those positions.
Well, it's really interesting. So this is a great story, and I love speaking with law firms, and I've actually mentioned it before in the podcast about some of the other law firms that we've worked with, and some smaller, some larger, but there's a lot of space for innovation within
absolutely
the legal services, basically in the legal field, mainly because I think there is, a very large percentage of lawyers still who are doing business kind of the old fashioned way. Their websites are not, even they're basically, ugly business cards, let's say, or they maybe have a couple forms there that are, Google forms. They're not. And what you're mentioning, data-driven decisions, when I think of some lawyers, kind of sitting there with their Rolodex, still kind of looking through all the cards, pretty hard to make a data-driven decision, when you've got just a bunch of papers around you and a Rolodex. So moving into something like Salesforce or any of these, systems that can really crunch the numbers, give you that, that 360 view like Salesforce talks about, it's obviously going to be able to add a lot of value to a law firm. So what were, I guess, some of the early wins? You mentioned you're talking about Social Security and then you moved to different parts of the business.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of the early wins. Yeah, when people were saying like, hey, Jason, what's going on here?
It's important to understand, when we talk about the base of my system now, 5 years in, we do things like artificial intelligence and predictive models and which cases to files to follow up with, who's going to work forward. And we've been able to increase those rates and do a lot of stuff. The mistake I think a lot of people make when they get into moving into Salesforce, whether it be a law firm or somebody else, is they see all these exciting things they can do and they want to do it all and they want to do it all at once. And that's not typically the best route to go. The best route to go is to start small. Things like following up on our retainer rate jumping up 5-10%. Things like getting rid of the spreadsheets and turning them into dashboards and reports. You do these small things to get that first win, that first couple of wins to say, okay, hey, this is bringing us forward. This is making momentum. Now let's add on this second layer of sales engagement.
Mhm.
extra data and analytics, extra, artificial intelligence, mapping, things like that. But it's really important to take that in phases and not try to swallow the whole thing at once and implement every piece of that Salesforce has to offer at once, because it's going to get overwhelming and you're going to get lost.
So you want to tell us about any of the mistakes that you made?
Absolutely. There was a lot of them. There was, it took at cases and tasks. It was probably well into the first year of using Salesforce before we really understood the correct use of when to use a case versus when to use a task. And it was just the way we had set it up. We weren't using like the ending, so we got it corrected. And I guess the biggest and hardest thing to do when getting everything going is pushing adaptation and following up to make sure everything's coming in the way that you think it is, that everybody's on board. There are a lot of times where you don't hear anything, so you assume everything is good, and it's just that message isn't being relayed. So people are building workarounds and trying to do this, and that's the hardest part is figuring out where to use validation rules, where to use a screen flow, where to automate these different things in order to keep the data solid.
Yeah, it's interesting, and just thinking about it, how I use Salesforce cases versus tasks. Everything is a matter of implementation, and also like with Titan, and a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's because our platform is kind of modeled or mirrored off of the abilities of Salesforce. Also within our platform, there's a lot of different ways you can achieve things, right? You could do things in 3, 4, 5 different ways. And just because both of them work doesn't mean one is going to be right. Doesn't mean that's going to be the way that's best for the user. So the user stories is always important, right? Like who's going to use this? How are they going to use it? And why are they using it? And if you don't ask those questions and it's just, hey, we want to implement this, we want to implement that, how far are you really going to get?
Right. And it all looks cool. And it is. But if you can't, you have to learn to walk before you can run. I mean, is really what it comes down to. Oh, and to give you a better idea of a mistake I made early on, I had to think about it for a second. Data groomer for 6 months wanted to get rid of all our duplicate contacts and accounts. So I merged a bunch of them together and merged a bunch of contacts that were different people together. And we had to go through manually about 3,000 contacts because I didn't have a backup yet, and look through the change history and recreate the ones that. So, and it sucked, but we got through it and we learned.
Right. Yeah, listen, I'm sure someone's listening to this right now. They're like 3,000. Oh, it's nothing, 3,000 contacts. Oh man, yeah, those kind of things. But that's right. That's where you're learning. Luckily, I hope you were already up and running and people were already seeing some value before you made them crazy to go through 3,000 contacts.
Yeah,
and
for the most
recreate
part.
this data. Oh man,
we've definitely come a long way with the users. They're much more excited as we implement new things, and change is hard. Change is hard when you're used to doing the same job every day, and you can have the best implementation partner in the world, but you've got to have somebody in your firm that's able to get your firm or your business that's able to get the employees excited, that's able to get the staff excited and on board, and to see how it benefits them and how it's going to make their lives easier. Because if you don't have that, it's really hard to have a successful project.
Are you that guy?
I'm that guy.
Wow. So does every Salesforce user do they all know you? They all know you. So do they come directly to you for suggestions, for improvements, all that kind of stuff?
So I do have a junior admin now that fields some of that stuff and more or less brings it up to me when he needs my help. But yeah, for the most part, it's been me. They can call me directly, email me directly. We have a support ticket system that we built within Salesforce for them to reach out to us as well, for us to keep a list for lower priority items.
So do you have any stories, if you can think of any, of times when users came to you and they said, hey, this is something that we think should change or be different or something you should add, and you saw major benefit from that?
Oh, absolutely, all the time. The hard thing is I don't come from legal background. So I rely on them every day to show me where the wins are, to show me where are you struggling, what takes up the most of your time. I mean, it's not so much of a thing of I'm telling them this is what you need to do to make you tell me where the problems are, and I'm going to find you a solution to make it faster, less painful, and more accurate for you. But I'd say almost everything that we built. So one of the big wins for us in our bankruptcy department, and where I think it's a big win for most law firms across the board, is our document collection. Bankruptcy does it more on a case of financial documents, where we have a really great document collection portal that we built with our program Form Titan that we use. Pretty good. That gives us the ability to show and display within that portal a related object of the documents that we're trying to get in. The customer can see it, the client can see a list of the documents we need. They can check off their box, upload the documents. It triggers back to us. It's a very smooth integration for us to keep that process very simple. We also use it in Social Security for following up on medical records and getting all of that, keeping all of that straight. A lot of those processes of collecting that documentation that you need can get really cumbersome in law firms. And this is really, by using Cadence's sales engagement and that document portal, it's really streamlined a lot of that for us.
It's cool you mentioned that. And one of the things, for some background is, like I was saying at the beginning, you came to me for document generation, which is really not related to document collection. Absolutely. Document collection is super cumbersome in Salesforce. In general, documents and files in Salesforce are difficult. I meet a lot of people from a lot of different industries doing a lot of different things. You just said, in the legal field, it's a lot of document collection. Sure. But what about healthcare? What about, healthcare is crazy. There's tons of documents. For anything financial, we're talking wealth management, even in the nonprofit world. If you're doing grant writing, another huge place for documents. So documents is something that is in a lot of people's processes, but they don't know how the hell to do it in Salesforce. And it's super difficult. And one of the things I keep telling people, and it's not usually what they come for, but I tell them, hey, listen, we've kind of hacked the whole document thing in Salesforce, and there's a lot that Titan can do in Salesforce. And by the way, I don't even know if you know about some of this stuff yet, but we've released a ton of things to do with files in Salesforce, and we can also do different things with documents and files within flows now in Salesforce. So we've got the ability to do virus scans, to do conversion of documents, different types. We should have another talk after this recording.
Yeah, very exciting.
And I got to show you this stuff because it's really a pain point for a lot of people, all the stuff around documents. So it's cool that you were able to figure out, hey, I can also use Titan to upload documents. And I think if I remember correctly, you ended up implementing that first.
Yes. Yep. It was actually really quick. And it's a full client portal. So they see a list of their documents. There's a link for them to go pay their bill with us. There's who is their attorney, who is their paralegal, contact information. They can update their contact information. They can send us a message. They can view their petition. All of that is in there. And I would say, really, I think Titan gave me 5 hours of free PS time when I first signed up, and that built the portal.
Wow.
That's what built it. It wasn't, I didn't spend any extra money on it. It was just, that did it. It was great. And you compare that to a product awesome. We love Salesforce, but you compare that to a product like Experience Cloud that has, huge fees for hosting it on a regular basis. It's great. We've absolutely loved it. And it's integrated well with our system, like I said, of sales engagement and follow-up, and our predictive model for following up on those documents for bankruptcy.
Very cool. So back to your journey a little bit.
Yeah.
When did you realize, hey, it's time to get a certification? It's time to, put a little bit more out of the office hours into being a Salesforce professional rather than just, CRM owner or advocate at the law firm?
Dreamforce, baby.
Dreamforce.
So there was no Dreamforce my first year, and I wanted to go take the admin boot camp my second year. And I wanted to be an admin. I wanted to be qualified, I guess, for the job that I was doing. I wanted to make sure I knew everything I needed to know. I wanted to not make mistakes I didn't know because I hadn't bothered learning. So I went and I took the boot camp and I passed the admin test at my first Dreamforce. Honestly, even the second and third were more, I had a couple account executives talk to me at Salesforce about potentially doing some consulting for law firms coming in because there weren't a lot of partners in the legal space. And so we talked about it internally and said, well, the next thing I got to do is if we want to be a partner, we've got to have 2 consulting certifications. So I went and got 2 consulting certifications, the Sales Cloud and Service Cloud consulting. And then so I kind of skipped over the app builder and the advanced admin, which I'm sure I'm going to go back here now and fill in. But that's, kind of gone from there. And I'm sure I'll keep going. I expect to be at 6 by the time I go back to Dreamforce here this September.
Oh, I like that. So that means you have 3 more to go?
3 more to go. What was it? 5. Platform app builder and advanced admin. And then I want to go take the marketing cloud admin boot camp there and get that one while I'm there. So then hopefully 6.
Are you guys using Marketing Cloud right now?
We have it. I'm learning how to use it so I mean, we're using it for journeys and some basic mail drip stuff, but I think there's a lot more we can do with it. I just got to get the knowledge up.
Very cool. And so tell me about that first Dreamforce experience. What was that like?
Crazy. I've been to conferences before for, call center week in Las Vegas. I've been to different legal conferences, but it's just not the same. It's an event. You learn a lot. Those boot camps to me are very informational. Plus, just the connections that you make within Salesforce staff, walking around the breakout sessions, looking at different products. I mean, I absolutely every time I go there, I come back with absolutely excited about all the new things I need to do in Salesforce that I never thought of that I should have known about. Building for the next few months, and it results every time. I absolutely recommend it.
I love that. And so all of a sudden, you're director of operations, you're CRM owner, but you're a high tech, professional, right? Did you ever think that was where you were going to go with things?
So no, I honestly saw most of staying in call centers and management, and I mean I always knew I was good at the processes. I guess I just didn't know something like this existed. Once I did, it fit like a glove.
So cool. That's a great story. I knew there was a good story here. And just from talking to you, through the last year, I'm like, it's got to be a good story there with Jason. And I want to now hear about, kind of from top to bottom, what it means for you as part of your firm to now also potentially, and I hope, for our sake, because I'll be able to send people to you, and for other law firms' sake, because they'll benefit. What does it mean that you guys are going to have, your own consulting firm as part of your law firm?
We're still working out the details on how that's going to work out. I mean, it'll be in partnership with the partners of the law firm, whether we do it as a separate business or we do it together. It's just still something we have up in the air. We got to look at just the legalities of it. That being said, I'm really excited to help law firms avoid the kind of rough learning experience I had in the beginning, spending that extra money to get set up because you don't exactly know what you need. I think a lot of the solutions that go across law firms, and I found as I built out 7 law types, there's a lot of solutions that maybe plug in a different place, but they're very similar. They have a lot of the same pieces. It's just figuring out how they go together. And law firms do run a bit different than your retail business or your online shopping. There's a lot of task management. Task automation is huge. And I'm just really excited to hopefully get to a point where one day nobody's having these podcasts saying, the technology is really behind in the legal industry, because it won't be anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope that, I wonder what people that are going to be listening to this are thinking, because what I'm hearing is this: you came to a law firm, you decided that, hey, this would be a great direction to go implementing Salesforce, have a whole journey with that. There's things that were a little difficult along the way. There was mistakes made, but people started seeing value very quickly. But now you're in a situation where the partners of this firm that you work at see so much value in Salesforce that they're willing to basically have a relationship with a consulting partner to actually empower other law firms.
Absolutely. I think it hurts the whole industry when they're when they're behind and working with outdated tools. I think, we're competitive. And that's where, maybe the, is it a separate business? Is it the law firm kind of comes into play? But absolutely, we want to change, what this looks like in the industry. And I think there's a lot of profitability and business potential in doing that and helping other law. I mean, we do advertising for other law firms as well. So we've helped other law firms for years make some of these different decisions and find ways to better their practice. We work in partnership with many of them. I guess it just kind of seemed like a second nature for us, or the natural course of things.
It's cool, and it sounds like a much more dynamic approach than probably a lot of other law firms have at this point. But I appreciate it. I think it's really cool. So I don't know, what are you excited about in 2024 at Salesforce? Like, where is your head at, and what are you looking forward to? What are some of the big things that you have on your radar, other than the certifications and, of course, just continuing to learn?
Yeah. So we've got one mass tort firm we're already working with and building some solutions for, specifically regarding a Camp Lejeune project and helping people that were affected by the water contamination. We are talking with another couple of clients about just, some solutions, and I'd really like to get that consulting, side of things going. As I talk to account managers and account executives, historically, they haven't heard a lot from law firms, and we're starting to hear from law firms more and more. It's, every other week that I'm getting a call that there's another law firm that's starting to look at Salesforce. So I really want to get in on the ground floor of that and see what we can do to help some of these, and especially these small and mid-sized firms. Look, there's a lot of solutions out there, even already built on the Salesforce cloud, right, for large litigation firms. And, but when you talk about the consumer firms, the bankruptcy guys, the Social Security, the personal injury, things like that, I think that's where this really comes into play, and really the group that we're looking to make a big step for.
Yeah, I think that's a really great place to be. Yeah, anything else you want to tell the audience before we wrap up? And I mean, you've given a lot of wisdom, a lot of different kind of tricks and tips for people getting involved in Salesforce, but I don't know, anything else you want to add?
Just really be sure as you're going in, and as an implementation partner who'd love to get everybody signed up with Salesforce, make sure you're ready for that journey, because it's not a small act. I mean, there are a lot of firms and businesses who could take it and use it just to kind of barely replace their CRM. But if you get into it and you start being successful, you're going to go down a rabbit hole that'll take a long time to come out.
Well, Jason, this has been a really great conversation. I really appreciate the relationship. I want to see it continue to flourish between us and you as a client, but also between us and you as a Salesforce partner. Excited to be referring business to each other at some point. And I definitely want to continue this conversation once you've done a couple more implementations for some other firms and have seen some interesting trends in the industry. So thanks so much for joining. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you to discuss Salesforce consulting or anything else, where should they do that?
My email address is jason, jason.adams @hoglundlaw.com, HOGLUNDLAW.com. Otherwise, I have my direct number is 612-270-3257. And of course, you can always reach out to Ben and he'll connect us as well.
Thanks so much, Jason. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Salesforce Radio. Don't forget to subscribe for more exciting discussions, expert tips, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders. Stay connected with Titan, plus the power of the planet's leading CRM. See you next time.